Everyone underestimated this black janitor, unaware she has a secret talent that will change everything. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Gloria Jenkins pushed her cleaning cart through the west wing of Axion Industries. The wheels squeaked slightly, third wheel on the left, just as it had for the past 2 months. She'd requested a replacement twice, but such requests moved slowly through the administrative labyrinth. Gloria had learned long ago that the art of being a janitor was the art of adaptation. A drop of oil from the maintenance room applied weekly kept the squeak manageable. At 52, Gloria moved with the quiet efficiency that came from 15 years of maintaining the immaculate conditions expected at a cutting-edge research facility. Her navy blue uniform, pressed crisp each Sunday evening, blended into the background of Axion's sleek modern architecture. Most days she felt like part of the building itself, essential, present, and utterly invisible. The clock on the wall read 7:14 p.m. The day shift engineers had mostly departed, leaving behind half-empty coffee mugs, scattered papers, and the faint scent of frustration that had permeated the building for weeks now. Gloria preferred the evening shift. The solitude allowed her to work without navigating around people who stepped over her mop bucket as if it were merely an inconvenience rather than evidence of her existence. She paused at the entrance to Lab 4, observing the chaos within. Dr. Patel's workspace looked like a tornado had touched down specifically on his desk. Unlike most of the sterile, organized workspaces, his area was a testament to what Gloria recognized as creative thinking: messy, nonlinear, exploratory. She smiled slightly, appreciating the human quality of disorder in this temple to precision and control. "I don't need it clean tonight," came a voice from behind her. Gloria turned to find Dr. Patel himself, his tie loosened and dark circles prominent under his eyes. He held a stack of printouts and a tablet. "Just tidying up the entrance, sir," Gloria replied. "Won't disturb your work." Dr. Patel nodded absently, already moving past her into his lab, his mind clearly elsewhere. Like most interactions Gloria had with the Axion staff, this one lasted less than 10 seconds and left no impression. She was the human equivalent of wallpaper, present but unnoticed unless flawed in some way. Gloria continued down the corridor, mentally reviewing her cleaning route. East wing bathrooms needed attention. The soap dispensers were running low. The conference rooms on the second floor required vacuuming after yesterday's investor meeting, and the break room refrigerator needed its weekly purging of abandoned lunches and expired yogurts. As she worked, Gloria's mind wandered to her daughter Amara's upcoming visit this weekend. At 28, Amara was everything Gloria had hoped she would become: confident, educated, and pursuing her doctorate in environmental engineering at MIT. Thoughts of Amara always filled Gloria with a complicated mixture of pride and melancholy. Her daughter was living the life Gloria had once imagined for herself, before reality had intervened with its harsh practicalities. Before becoming a janitor, Gloria had spent 12 years as a mechanical engineer in the Navy. She had excelled there, developing a reputation for solving problems others couldn't see. Her specialty had been vibration analysis, detecting issues in complex machinery by understanding the subtle language of their movements and sounds. She had been respected, valued, visible. Then came her husband James's cancer diagnosis, followed by 3 years of treatments that drained their savings and forced Gloria to leave the service to care for him and 9-year-old Amara. After James passed, Gloria found herself a widow with a child to support and a resume gap that made returning to engineering nearly impossible. The janitorial position at Axion had been meant as a temporary solution 15 years ago. Now, as she polished the glass wall of conference room C on the executive floor, Gloria reflected on how temporary solutions often became permanent fixtures when inertia took hold. Through the glass, she could see several figures engaged in what appeared to be a tense discussion. The executives at Axion rarely stayed this late unless something was wrong. Gloria recognized Chief Engineer Marcus Richardson, his tall frame bent over the conference table as he gestured at a holographic display. His precisely trimmed beard couldn't hide the tightness in his jaw. Beside him stood Dr. Eleanor Zhou, the brilliant head of research and development, whose usual composed demeanor had given way to visible concern as she swiped through a series of technical readouts. 3 months and $20 million later, We're still getting the same error. Richardson's voice carried through the glass, despite his attempt to modulate it. The prototype simply won't maintain calibration for more than 37 minutes. Gloria slowed her polishing, her hand making wider, more deliberate circles on the glass. Years of being overlooked had taught her that people spoke freely in front of janitorial staff, as if their uniforms rendered them not just invisible, but unhearing as well. Dr. Joe shook her head, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, in a gesture Gloria had come to recognize as her tell for deep concern. The investors are getting impatient. If we don't solve this within 2 weeks, we lose the contract. And if we lose this contract, the company loses everything, added CEO Thomas Warner, his normally confident voice edged with uncharacteristic worry. This water purification system isn't just another product, it's our future. Half the board is already talking about cutting our losses. Gloria continued her methodical cleaning, her movements automatic while her mind processed what she was hearing. Axion's revolutionary water purification system had been featured in every company newsletter for the past year. Designed to transform contaminated water into potable water at a fraction of the cost of current methods, it promised to address water scarcity in regions most affected by climate change. It was the kind of project that made Gloria proud to be even peripherally associated with Axion. As she listened, technical terms filtered through the conversation: calibration drift, molecular separation barriers, filtration chamber resonance. Gloria's trained mind began piecing together the nature of the problem. It sounded mechanical rather than chemical or computational, precisely the kind of issue she had specialized in diagnosing during her Navy days. For a brief moment, Gloria's hand paused in its circular motion. She had an instinct about what might be causing their calibration problems. The symptoms Richardson described matched a resonance issue she had encountered in submarine filtration systems. But the thought vanished as quickly as it formed, replaced by the reality of her position. She was the night janitor, not a consultant. Her expertise, whatever remained of it after 15 years, was not what Axion was paying for. Richardson's voice rose again. We've tried every software solution possible. We've recalibrated the sensors, adjusted the chemical composition, modified the pressure variables. Nothing works beyond the 37-minute mark. Gloria resumed her cleaning, moving to the next panel of glass. She recognized a problem when she heard one. Both the technical problem plaguing the prototype and the social problem that would prevent her from offering any insight into it. Some barriers were harder to break through than others, and the invisible barrier between maintenance staff and technical teams was nearly impenetrable. As she moved away from conference room C, Gloria glanced back at the concerned faces of Axion's brightest minds. For a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to imagine walking through that door, diagnosing their problem, being seen, truly seen, for the first time in 15 years. Then the moment passed, and she continued pushing her cart down the corridor, the third wheel on the left squeaking softly against the polished floor. Gloria checked her revised cleaning schedule, confirming what she had already memorized. Tonight she would clean Lab 7, the high-security research space where Axion's troubled water purification prototype resided. She had deliberately rearranged her usual rotation, swapping with Miguel, who normally handled that section. It had cost her a promised batch of her famous jambalaya, but curiosity demanded satisfaction. You actually volunteered for Lab 7? Miguel had asked incredulously that morning when they crossed paths during shift change. Those engineers are wound tighter than industrial springs right now. Dr. Joe nearly bit my head off yesterday for moving a stack of papers. Gloria had shrugged casually. I don't mind them. They barely notice I'm there anyway. What she didn't tell Miguel was that not being noticed was precisely the advantage she sought. Invisibility, while often painful, occasionally offered unexpected benefits, like the ability to observe without interference. At precisely 8:35 p.m., Gloria swiped her access card at the lab entrance. The security system acknowledged her limited clearance with a green light and a soft beep. As the door slid open, she felt a flutter of anticipation in her chest that she hadn't experienced in years. It reminded her of preparing to diagnose particularly challenging mechanical issues during her Navy days. That moment before the puzzle revealed itself. Lab 7 was the largest and best-equipped research space in the facility. Unlike the standard labs with their uniform workstations and predictable layouts, this room had been custom designed for the water purification project. The ceiling rose 2 stories high to accommodate the prototype's full vertical filtration system. Multiple computer stations formed a semicircle around the central platform, where the machine stood like a monolithic altar to technological innovation. The prototype itself was both beautiful and intimidating. Standing nearly 15 feet tall, its cylindrical main chamber was encased in transparent panels that revealed the complex internal mechanisms. Tubes and pipes of varying diameters connected different components, and a series of digital displays provided real-time data on its operations. Even dormant as it was now, the machine hummed softly, the sound of standby power flowing through its systems. Gloria set down her cleaning supplies and began her routine, methodically working her way around the lab's perimeter. She dusted the computer stations first, her eyes scanning the notes scribbled on whiteboards and sticky notes. Phrases like calibration failure at T plus 37 and resonance aberration unresolved jumped out at her, confirming what she had overheard the previous evening. As she emptied the trash bins, she found them filled with crumpled calculations and discarded hypotheses, physical evidence of mounting frustration. One notepad page contained a handwritten message that read simply, "Have we considered that this might be impossible?" The word impossible had been underlined 3 times, the pen having torn through the paper. Gloria moved closer to the prototype, ostensibly to clean the floor surrounding it. The machine was still powered on in its standby mode, engineers presumably planning to return for late-night testing. She placed her hand gently on its exterior panel, an instinctive gesture born from years of mechanical diagnosis. Engineers relied on screens and data. Gloria had always trusted her hands and ears just as much. There it was, a barely perceptible vibration pattern that felt somehow wrong. Not dangerous, but incorrect, like an instrument slightly out of tune in an otherwise perfect orchestra. The vibration seemed to pulse in a specific rhythm, and Gloria recognized it immediately as a resonance issue. Something in the machine's structure was amplifying certain vibrations while dampening others, creating a pattern that would eventually throw off the most precise calibrations. She closed her eyes, focusing entirely on the tactile information flowing through her fingertips. The vibration reminded her of an old submarine engine she had once repaired, where a similar resonance issue had baffled the engineering team for months. That time, the problem had been improperly mounted dampeners that were actually amplifying vibrations rather than reducing them. Gloria glanced at the floor-to-ceiling schematics posted on the lab's east wall. Even from a distance, she could identify the filtration chamber mounting system, a design that, to her experienced eye, contained a critical flaw. The rigid mounting would transfer vibrations from the primary filtration process directly to the calibration sensors. Her fingers itched to examine the machine more closely, to confirm her suspicions with proper measurements. For a moment, she contemplated the diagnostic tools tucked away in the supply cabinets, tools she knew how to use better than most of the recent engineering graduates who populated the day shift. "What are you doing?" The voice startled Gloria back to reality. She withdrew her hand from the prototype as if caught stealing and turned to find a young engineer, Ryan Mendez according to his ID badge, watching her with suspicious eyes. "Just cleaning, sir," she replied, quickly resuming her mopping. "Don't touch the equipment," he said, his tone carrying the casual dismissiveness reserved for those considered irrelevant. "Some of these components are extremely sensitive." "Of course. Sorry about that." Gloria kept her eyes downcast, retreating into the invisible persona that had become second nature. Mendez hardly acknowledged her apology, already focused on his tablet as he approached the prototype. Gloria continued cleaning, now at a careful distance from the machine, but watching from the corner of her eye as Mendez ran through a standard diagnostic sequence. "Still getting the drift at 36 minutes, he muttered to himself, frustration evident. Gloria bit her tongue. The answer was literally vibrating beneath his fingertips, but she knew what would happen if she spoke up. The last time she had offered a suggestion to one of the engineers about the ventilation system that was clearly installed incorrectly, she had been met with patronizing smiles. Later, she'd overheard snide jokes about the cleaning lady with an engineering degree from the University of Janitorial Sciences. That humiliation had taught her a valuable lesson about knowing her place in Axion's hierarchy. Yet as she watched Mendez struggle with the same diagnostic tests that had already failed countless times, something rebellious stirred within her. It's the mounting system, she thought silently. It's creating a resonance pattern that amplifies after 30 minutes of operation. As if summoned by her thoughts, Dr. Joe entered the lab, her face drawn with the worry that seemed to have become her permanent expression in recent weeks. "Any progress?" she asked Mendez, who shook his head. "Running the same tests again, but I'm not seeing anything new," he replied, then gestured toward Gloria. "The cleaning staff was touching the prototype, by the way." Dr. Joe turned toward Gloria, noticing her presence for perhaps the first time. "Still here, Mrs. Jenkins?" she asked, her tone neither particularly friendly nor unfriendly, simply distracted. "Just finishing up, ma'am," Gloria replied, already moving toward the door with her cleaning cart. She had seen what she needed to see, confirmed what she had suspected. Now all that remained was the question of what to do with that knowledge. Dr. Joe approached the prototype, placing her own hand where Gloria's had been moments before. She sighed heavily. "I don't know what we're missing." The words hung in the air, an unintentional invitation that made Gloria pause at the threshold. In storytelling, this moment had a name: the call to adventure, the crossroads where the protagonist must decide whether to step forward into the unknown or retreat into the comfort of the familiar. Gloria's hand tightened on her cart handle. She could feel the weight of her expertise, dusty but intact, pressing against the barriers of expectations and assumptions. She could walk away, continue her rounds, remain in the comfortable invisibility of her janitorial role, or she could speak up, risk ridicule, and potentially help solve a problem that had stumped some of the brightest minds in the industry. This was her call: step forward or remain invisible. And suddenly, for reasons she couldn't fully articulate, the choice seemed both terrifying and inevitable. The eastern sky was beginning to lighten as Gloria drove home, the familiar route requiring little conscious thought. Her mind remained in Lab 7, replaying the vibration patterns she had felt beneath her fingertips. The resonance issue was clear to her, as obvious as a familiar face in a crowd, yet she had said nothing. "Just doing my job," she muttered to herself as she pulled into her apartment complex parking lot. The phrase had become both shield and prison over the years, a boundary that kept her safe while keeping her small. Her modest two-bedroom apartment welcomed her with the comfortable silence of a space that had adapted to its occupants' routines. Gloria moved through her post-shift ritual with practiced efficiency. Shoes by the door, uniform in the hamper, shower to wash away the industrial cleaners that clung to her skin despite gloves and protective clothing. By the time she settled at her small kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea, the sun had fully risen, casting long rectangles of light across her worn linoleum floor. Sleep would have to wait. Her mind was too active, fingers tapping an unconscious rhythm against her mug, the same rhythm as the prototype's vibration. Gloria rose and retrieved a weathered leather notebook from the bookshelf in her living room. The spine cracked as she opened it, the pages filled with diagrams and calculations from her Navy days. Most of the entries dated back 15 years or more, but the technical notations remained as clear to her as if she had written them yesterday. She flipped to a blank page and began sketching the Axion prototype from memory, her hand moving with surprising confidence. The filtration chamber, the mounting system, the calibration sensors, all rendered with the precision of someone who had spent years transforming mechanical intuition into technical documentation. As she worked, the problem clarified itself further, her mind running calculations that matched the vibration pattern she had observed. "The harmonics are building up," she whispered to the empty apartment. "They need a dampening system that adjusts to the resonance frequency." For 3 hours, Gloria filled page after page with potential solutions, losing herself in the familiar flow of engineering problem-solving that had once defined her professional identity. When she finally closed the notebook, the solution seemed obvious: a modified mounting system using composite materials to absorb and redirect the harmonic vibrations. Simple, elegant, and almost certainly effective. And almost certainly not something she would ever share. Gloria finally went to bed, but sleep came fitfully, interrupted by dreams of submarines and filtration systems and conference rooms where no one could hear her voice no matter how loudly she shouted. For the next 3 days, Gloria watched the team grow increasingly desperate. She adjusted her cleaning schedule to coincide with their late-night sessions, becoming the silent witness to mounting frustration and faltering hope. On Wednesday night, she overheard Richardson berating a junior engineer until the young woman was fighting back tears. "We've tried every possible software solution," he snapped. "Find me something that works or find another job." On Thursday, she noticed Dr. Joe still in the lab at 3 a.m., her normally immaculate appearance disheveled, running the same failed diagnostic test with the desperate persistence of someone running out of options. By Friday, the atmosphere had shifted from determination to resignation. Gloria cleaned around engineers who barely spoke, their silence more telling than their previous arguments. They moved like automatons, going through motions they no longer believed would produce results. Throughout it all, Gloria maintained her invisibility, cleaning around them as they worked, emptying their trash bins filled with discarded hypotheses, wiping down whiteboards covered with abandoned approaches. She noticed Dr. Joe occasionally acknowledging her with a distracted smile or thank you, small gestures that didn't go unnoticed in a workplace where most treated the maintenance staff as mobile furniture. At home, Gloria continued refining her solution, unable to stop her mind from working on the problem, despite her determination not to get involved. Each night, she told herself to let it go. Each night, she added more detail to her diagrams, calculated more precise specifications, imagined more clearly how her solution would work. "It's not your place," she told her reflection in the bathroom mirror on Saturday morning, dark circles under her eyes testifying to her disturbed sleep. "Nobody wants to hear from the cleaning lady." The bathroom mirror offered no arguments, reflecting only the truth of her current reality. A black woman in her 50s, her hair showing more gray with each passing month, wearing the worn comfort clothes of someone who had accepted her station in life. Not an engineer, not anymore. Her phone rang, breaking her self-critical reverie. Amara's name flashed on the screen, a welcome interruption. "Hey, baby," Gloria answered, her voice automatically brightening. "Morning, Mom. You sound tired. Late shift again?" "The usual," Gloria replied, settling onto her couch. "How's the dissertation coming?" Amara launched into an enthusiastic explanation of her latest research breakthrough in water conservation technology, her words tumbling over each other with the infectious energy that had characterized her since childhood. Gloria listened, pride swelling in her chest, asking clarifying questions at just the right moments. "Anyway," Amara concluded, "that's why I'm calling. I'm presenting at a conference in your area next weekend, so I thought I'd come a day early and stay with you. That okay?" "Of course it is. I'll make your favorite jambalaya." "The spicy one that makes Dad's uncle cry?" Gloria laughed, a genuine sound that felt foreign after weeks of tightly controlled professionalism. "That's the one." They chatted about logistics for a few minutes before Amara asked, "So what's going on with you? How's Axion treating you these days?" Gloria hesitated, unaccustomed to discussing her work in any meaningful way. But something about Amara's genuine interest, combined with the week's frustrations, loosened her usual reserve. "They've got this prototype that's not working right," she found herself saying. "Water purification system that keeps failing calibration." "The Aqua Matrix system?" Amara asked, instantly recognizing the project. "I read about it in Tech Innovations last month. Supposed to be revolutionary if they can get it working." "That's the one," Gloria confirmed, surprised by her daughter's familiarity with the project. "They've been at it for months now, and they're running out of time." "What's the problem with it?" Before Gloria could consider the wisdom of sharing, the details were flowing out of her. The vibration pattern, the resonance issue, the mounting system flaw, the solution she had designed but kept to herself. The technical language she rarely used anymore emerged fluid and precise, as if a dam had broken inside her. Amara was silent for a long moment after Gloria finished. "Mom," she finally said, her voice both gentle and firm, "you need to tell them it's not that simple." "Why not? You just explained the problem and solution perfectly to me." Gloria sighed, suddenly feeling every day of her 52 years. You know why, Amara. They're not going to listen to the cleaning lady. So what? Let them not listen. At least you'll have tried. And become the joke of the research division? No, thank you. Gloria's voice hardened with the memory of past humiliations. I know my place there. The silence on the other end of the line stretched uncomfortably long before Amara spoke again, her voice softer but no less intense. What happened to you, Mom? What happened to the woman who used to tell me never to hide my light? Who said that expertise doesn't care about titles or degrees, just results? Gloria had no answer. The woman who raised me, Amara continued, would have marched into that lab and shown those engineers exactly what they were missing. She wouldn't have cared if they laughed, because she would have known she was right. That woman had a different life, Gloria replied quietly. Different circumstances. Maybe, but she's still in there. I hear her in your voice when you talk about this problem. I hear how much you care, how much you know. Amara paused. What's the worst that could happen if you speak up? Gloria leaned back on her couch, eyes closed, considering the question seriously. Ridicule, certainly. Perhaps complaints to her supervisor. Possibly even reprimands for overstepping her role. And what's the best that could happen? Amara pressed, not waiting for an answer to her first question. The best? Being heard, being seen, using her knowledge to solve a problem that mattered, contributing something meaningful beyond clean floors and empty trash bins. Just think about it, okay? Amara said, sensing her mother's internal conflict. I've got to run to a meeting, but I'll call you tomorrow. Love you, Mom. Love you too, baby. After hanging up, Gloria sat motionless on her couch, Amara's questions echoing in her mind. Outside, a spring rain began to fall, gentle drops striking her window in an irregular pattern that somehow matched the troubled rhythm of her thoughts. Monday evening arrived with a palpable sense of doom hanging over Axion Industries. Gloria noticed it the moment she entered the building. The strained smiles of the receptionist, the hushed conversations that ceased when people rounded corners, the unusual presence of executives on the research floor. Something had changed and not for the better. Melissa from HR was clearing out her desk when Gloria came to empty the trash bins, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Everything okay? Gloria asked, though the answer was obviously no. First round of layoffs, Melissa whispered, glancing around nervously. 20 people today. More coming if they can't fix the prototype. Gloria nodded sympathetically, but internally her pulse quickened. The stakes had suddenly become larger than her personal discomfort or professional pride. Real people with real families were losing their livelihoods. As she moved through her cleaning routine, Gloria gathered fragments of information like scattered puzzle pieces. The board had issued an ultimatum, 1 week to show measurable progress or the entire project would be terminated. Investors were pulling out. Competitors were circling. Dr. Joe had been given direct responsibility for salvaging the situation, with Richardson reluctantly placed under her authority in a last-ditch organizational shakeup. When Gloria reached the corridor outside Lab 7, she found herself slowing down, her cleaning cart suddenly feeling as heavy as the decision weighing on her mind. Through the glass panels, she could see Dr. Joe and Richardson in what appeared to be yet another heated discussion. Their voices carried into the hallway, neither of them bothering to moderate their volume. The board is giving us 1 final week, Eleanor, Richardson was saying, his usual authoritative tone edged with desperation. 1 week before they pull the plug on the entire division. Dr. Joe ran her hands through her hair, a gesture Gloria had never seen from the normally composed scientist. I know, Marcus. You've reminded me hourly since the meeting. We've tried everything in the standard engineering playbook. Everything. Then we need to start looking outside the playbook, Dr. Joe retorted, because if this fails, 300 people lose their jobs, including us. The number struck Gloria like a physical blow. 300 people, 300 families affected, all because of a mechanical problem she knew how to fix, but had been too afraid to address. Gloria continued her cleaning duties in a fog of indecision, her movements automatic while her mind wrestled with competing imperatives. By the time she reached Lab 7 on her rotation, it was after midnight. The facility had emptied out, even the most dedicated engineers having departed to grab what sleep they could before returning to the problem in the morning. The prototype stood in the center of the lab, silently mocking the collective failure of some of the brightest minds in the industry. Gloria set down her cleaning supplies and approached it slowly, her heart pounding with a decision not yet consciously made. She placed her hand on the prototype's main housing and closed her eyes, feeling the vibration pattern again. It hadn't changed. The same resonance issue, building up over time until it threw off the calibration. In her mind, she could see the waves of energy moving through the system, amplifying in exactly the wrong places. Without overthinking it, Gloria pulled out her phone and recorded the sound for a full 40 minutes, long enough to capture the subtle shift that occurred around the 37-minute mark when the calibration began to drift. Then she walked around the prototype, taking photos from various angles, paying particular attention to the mounting system and connection points. Her actions felt simultaneously rebellious and inevitable, as if she were merely accepting what had been decided long ago. There was freedom in that feeling, the relief of finally stepping through a doorway after standing on the threshold for too long. Gloria's apartment felt different when she returned home that morning, smaller somehow, as if it had shrunk around her expanding sense of purpose. She moved with unusual energy, despite having been awake for over 24 hours, spreading her materials across her kitchen table. The photos, her notebook, and her old Navy maintenance manuals that she'd kept all these years in a storage bin under her bed. She connected her phone to her ancient but functional laptop, downloading the audio recording and running it through a frequency analysis program she remembered from her engineering days. The resulting visualization confirmed what her trained ear had already told her, a clear harmonic pattern emerging at specific intervals, building until it reached interference levels. Next, she examined the photos methodically, comparing them to the schematics she had memorized from the lab walls. The mounting system was indeed the culprit, creating a rigid connection that transferred vibrations directly to the most sensitive components. For hours, Gloria lost herself in the analysis, comparing data points, calculating resonance frequencies, researching modern damping materials that hadn't existed during her Navy days. She dug out textbooks from her abandoned engineering courses, refreshing formulas and principles that had grown dusty but not disappeared from her mind. By dawn, she was certain. The problem wasn't in the software or the chemical process as the team suspected. It was mechanical, a resonance issue created by the improper mounting of the filtration chamber. And the solution was elegant in its simplicity, a composite damping system that would absorb the problematic vibrations before they could affect calibration. Gloria sat back, rubbing her eyes, a mixture of satisfaction and trepidation washing over her. She had solved the puzzle, but the harder challenge remained, convincing others to listen. She showered and changed into clean clothes, considering her approach. Simply telling Richardson seemed doomed to failure. His dismissiveness toward maintenance staff was legendary. Other engineers might be more receptive, but lacked the authority to implement her solution. Dr. Joe seemed the most promising option. The scientist had always treated Gloria with basic human dignity and now faced the most pressure to solve the problem. Desperation might make her more open to unconventional sources of help. As Gloria prepared to leave for her shift, unusually early, her phone rang. It was Amara. "Did you tell them yet?" her daughter asked without preamble. "I'm heading in early to try," Gloria admitted. "Really?" Amara sounded surprised and pleased. "What changed your mind?" Gloria considered the question. "They're laying people off. 300 jobs on the line." "So you're doing it for everyone else, not for yourself." The observation caught Gloria off guard. "I suppose that's easier than doing it for me." "Mom," Amara's voice softened, "you deserve to be seen too, you know, not just the people you're helping." Gloria let that sink in, unable to formulate a response. "Call me after," Amara continued. "I want to hear how it goes. And Mom, I'm proud of you, no matter what happens." The words carried Gloria out her door and into her car, a talisman against the fear that threatened to overtake her resolve. The morning shift was just arriving when Gloria entered Action Industries, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had deliberately chosen this time, early enough that Dr. Joe, who had been working around the clock, might be alone, but late enough that the building would be accessible. She found the scientist exactly where she expected, alone in Lab 7, reviewing data from overnight tests, her eyes red from lack of sleep. Gloria took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked purposefully into the lab. Not with her cleaning cart, but with her notebook and phone. For the first time in 15 years, she entered a room at Axion not as a janitor, but as the engineer she had always remained beneath the uniform. Dr. Joe? I think I might know what's wrong with your machine, Gloria said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. The scientist looked up, surprise evident on her face, as she registered both Gloria's presence and the unusual context. Mrs. Jenkins? I was a mechanical engineer in the Navy. I've seen this problem before. Dr. Joe's expression shifted from confusion to curiosity. I'm listening. Gloria had officially crossed the threshold. You were an engineer in the Navy? Dr. Joe's voice carried equal parts curiosity and skepticism as she gestured for Gloria to sit down. Mechanical engineer, yes, 12 years. Gloria remained standing, her posture straight, shoulders back, the stance of someone reclaiming a long-dormant identity. Specialized in vibration analysis and harmonic resonance issues in propulsion systems. And you believe there's a connection to our prototype? Gloria nodded, setting her notebook on the desk and opening it to reveal pages of diagrams and calculations. The calibration drift isn't a software issue or a chemical degradation problem. It's mechanical, a resonance vibration that builds up over time. Dr. Joe leaned forward, eyes scanning Gloria's neat technical drawings. Something shifted in her expression, a flicker of recognition perhaps, or simply the desperate hope of someone who had exhausted all other options. Walk me through it. For the next 20 minutes, Gloria explained her theory, her technical vocabulary flowing more naturally with each sentence. She showed Dr. Joe the frequency analysis from her audio recording, pointing out the specific harmonic patterns that emerged around the 30-minute mark. The mounting system is too rigid, Gloria explained, her finger tracing the connection points on one of her photos. It's transferring vibrations directly to the calibration sensors. What you need is a dampening system using composite materials that can absorb those specific frequencies. Dr. Joe studied the materials silently, her exhaustion temporarily forgotten as her analytical mind engaged with a new possibility. Finally, she looked up at Gloria with an expression the janitor hadn't seen in weeks. Hope. This actually makes sense, she admitted, but we've had structural engineers review the mounting system multiple times. They were looking for structural weaknesses or instabilities, Gloria replied. Not resonance patterns. Different problem, different approach. Dr. Joe tapped her fingers on the desk, clearly making a decision. I want you to present this to the team. Gloria felt her newfound confidence waver. I'm not sure that's necessary. I can just show you what needs to be changed, and they need to hear this directly from you. Dr. Joe interrupted, suddenly animated. This could save the project, Mrs. Jenkins. It could save 300 jobs. She checked her watch. The emergency team meeting is at 9. That gives us an hour to prepare. The conference room fell silent as Gloria entered behind Dr. Joe. 8 pairs of eyes tracked their movement with varying degrees of confusion. Richardson sat at the head of the table, his expression darkening when he saw Gloria. Dr. Joe, we're already behind schedule, he said, pointedly ignoring Gloria. Why is maintenance staff in our emergency meeting? Dr. Joe remained standing, her position beside Gloria making a clear statement. Everyone, I believe Mrs. Jenkins may have identified our calibration problem. I've asked her to present her findings. Richardson barely looked up, making a show of checking his tablet. With all due respect to Mrs. Jenkins, we have a team of PhDs working on this issue. We don't have time for distractions. Marcus, Dr. Joe's voice carried a new edge of authority. As project lead, I'm asking the team to listen. 10 minutes. Richardson's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly. Gloria moved to the front of the room, conscious of the skeptical gazes following her. Ryan Mendez, the engineer who had reprimanded her for touching the prototype, whispered something to his colleague, prompting a poorly concealed snicker. For a moment, Gloria's throat tightened, old insecurities threatening to overwhelm her new resolve. Then she remembered Amara's words. You deserve to be seen too. She took a deep breath and began, her voice steady. The prototype is experiencing a resonance vibration issue that affects calibration after approximately 37 minutes of operation. She connected her phone to the conference room display, bringing up her frequency analysis. This is a recording of the prototype during operation. If you focus on these frequency bands, you can see the harmonic pattern emerging. The room remained skeptical, but Gloria noticed a few of the younger engineers leaning forward, their expressions shifting from dismissal to curiosity. I've seen this exact pattern before during my 12 years as a mechanical engineer in the Navy. It's a classic resonance transfer problem. She projected one of her diagrams on the screen, highlighting the mounting points of the filtration chamber. Your filtration chamber is mounted on a frame that vibrates at a frequency that eventually disrupts calibration. She explained the physics in precise technical terms, her diagrams building a case that grew more compelling with each slide. By the time she finished her technical explanation, the room had divided. Half the team was engaged, asking clarifying questions that Gloria answered with confident precision. The other half, led by Richardson, remained visibly unconvinced. "This is all very interesting," Richardson said, his tone suggesting the opposite. "But we've had structural engineers examine the mounting system extensively. They found no issues." "With respect, Mr. Richardson, they were looking for structural failures, not resonance patterns," Gloria replied, echoing what she had told Dr. Zhou earlier. "Different analysis, different results." "Even if your theory has merit," said Mendez, "diagnosing the problem doesn't solve it. We'd need to redesign the entire mounting system, which would take weeks we don't have." Gloria shook her head. "You don't need to redesign it. You need to dampen the vibration by adding a composite material at these specific points." She highlighted 3 connection junctions on her diagram. "The material will absorb the problematic frequencies before they can affect calibration. And I suppose you just happen to have some specialized vibration dampening material in your cleaning cart?" Richardson's assistant, Thomas, asked with a smirk, drawing scattered laughter. Gloria didn't flinch. "No, but I bet the materials lab on the 3rd floor does. They're working with advanced polymers that would do the job. Dr. Patel's team has been developing composite materials for aerospace applications that have similar dampening properties to what we used in submarine engines." The room fell silent at her specific knowledge of other Axion research projects a janitor shouldn't know about in such detail. Dr. Zhou seized the moment. "I've reviewed Mrs. Jenkins' initial calculations, and they're sound. Given our timeline and the stakes involved, I believe this approach deserves serious consideration." "Even if it means taking advice from the cleaning staff?" Richardson asked, his tone making the question more pointed than the words themselves. "Especially then," Dr. Zhou replied firmly. "Innovation doesn't care about job titles, Marcus." Richardson's expression remained skeptical, but the desperate circumstances left him little room to object. "Fine, we'll test it, but given our timeline, we'll need results by end of day." "Agreed," Dr. Zhou nodded, then turned to Gloria. "Mrs. Jenkins, would you be willing to work with the team to implement your solution? We'd compensate you for your time, of course." The question caught Gloria off guard. She had expected to share her insight and return to her regular duties, not to actively join the engineering team, even temporarily. The prospect was both exhilarating and terrifying. She hesitated, feeling the weight of every gaze in the room. "Yes, I'll help." "Excellent," Dr. Zhou smiled. "Ryan, can you take Mrs. Jenkins to connect with Dr. Patel about the materials? Thomas, prepare the test protocol. Let's move quickly, people." As the meeting dispersed, Gloria found herself in an unfamiliar position, the center of cautious attention, neither fully accepted nor completely dismissed. She had crossed from invisibility into something undefined, a liminal space between her established role and her reclaimed expertise. Richardson approached her as she gathered her materials, his voice low. "I admire your initiative, Mrs. Jenkins, but I should warn you, if this fails, it won't reflect well on anyone involved, including you." The threat was thinly veiled. Gloria met his gaze steadily. "I understand, Mr. Richardson. The responsibility is mine." "And if it works?" Dr. Zhou asked, having overheard as she approached. Richardson didn't answer, merely nodded curtly before exiting the conference room. "Don't mind him," Dr. Zhou said once he was gone. He's under enormous pressure. We all are. Gloria nodded, understanding all too well how pressure could transform people. What happens now? Now, Dr. Joe said, with the first genuine smile Gloria had seen in weeks, we test your theory and hopefully save 300 jobs in the process. As they left the conference room, Gloria felt the weight of what she had just committed to. She had offered not just her idea, but herself, stepping fully into a role she had abandoned 15 years ago. Whether this proved to be her redemption or her humiliation would be determined in the next few hours. The materials lab on the third floor was a world away from the basement corridors Gloria usually cleaned. Bright natural light streamed through wall-to-wall windows, illuminating workstations filled with cutting-edge equipment and researchers in pristine lab coats. Dr. Patel greeted Dr. Joe warmly, his expression shifting to confusion when he noticed Gloria. This is Mrs. Jenkins, Dr. Joe explained. She's consulting on the Aqua Matrix project. Gloria noted the careful choice of words, not our janitor, but consulting. A small kindness that Dr. Joe likely thought nothing of, but which resonated deeply with Gloria. Dr. Patel's eyes widened slightly in recognition. Ah, yes, you clean our lab on Tuesdays and Fridays. He smiled, genuinely friendly if somewhat bewildered. You're consulting now? Mrs. Jenkins has identified a resonance issue in the mounting system, Dr. Joe explained. We need a polymer with specific dampening properties to address it. Gloria stepped forward, opening her notebook to the page where she had calculated the required material specifications. We need something that can dampen these specific frequency ranges without degrading under constant vibration. Dr. Patel studied her calculations with growing interest. These are quite precise requirements. Submarines have similar issues, Gloria explained. Different environment, same physics. Understanding dawned in Dr. Patel's eyes. You're an engineer? Was, Gloria corrected, though the distinction felt increasingly arbitrary. Navy, mechanical systems. Dr. Patel nodded, his initial confusion replaced by professional curiosity. We've been developing a new composite polymer for aerospace applications that might work. It's designed to maintain structural integrity while absorbing vibrational energy. He turned to a nearby workstation. Let me show you the specs. For the next hour, Gloria worked alongside Dr. Patel and his team, discussing material properties with the natural fluency of someone returning to their native language after years of speaking something else. They identified a polymer that matched her requirements almost perfectly, and by noon had fabricated dampening components to her specifications. Throughout the process, Gloria was acutely aware of a shift in how people interacted with her. The materials team addressed their questions directly to her, not to Dr. Joe. They listened when she spoke. They saw her, not as a janitor temporarily playing engineer, but as a colleague with valuable expertise. The feeling was intoxicating. Back in Lab 7, the implementation team had prepared the prototype for modification. Ryan Mendez, who had been skeptical during the morning meeting, was now directing the preparations with surprising enthusiasm. We're ready to install the dampeners whenever you're set, he told Gloria as she entered with the polymer components. His tone was professionally neutral, but the fact that he addressed her directly rather than speaking through Dr. Joe marked a small but significant shift. Richardson stood off to the side, arms crossed, observing the proceedings with poorly concealed skepticism. Gloria could feel his gaze following her movements, waiting for a mistake, a hesitation, any sign that she was out of her depth. The installation needs to be precise, Gloria explained to the team gathered around the prototype. The alignment has to be exact, or we'll create new resonance patterns instead of eliminating the existing ones. She laid out the implementation plan, assigning tasks based on her assessment of the team's skills rather than their official positions. To their credit, the engineers accepted her direction without complaint, perhaps because desperation had trumped ego, or perhaps because her quiet confidence left little room for argument. As they worked, Gloria found herself alongside Thomas, Richardson's assistant, who had made the snide comment about her cleaning cart. He avoided her eyes as they calibrated one of the dampening components. "Hand me the torque wrench, please," Gloria requested. When he passed it to her, she added quietly, "I do keep some useful things in my cleaning cart, you know." WD-40 works wonders on squeaky egos. Thomas looked up, startled, then a reluctant smile cracked his serious expression. I deserve that. Yes, you did, Gloria agreed, but returned his smile briefly before refocusing on the task. By mid-afternoon, the modifications were complete. The prototype stood ready, the new dampening components barely visible, but, if Gloria's calculations were correct, about to solve a multi-million-dollar problem. Let's run a full test cycle, Dr. Joe announced, gesturing for the team to take their positions. Standard calibration protocol, extended duration. Gloria moved to the side of the lab, suddenly uncertain of her place now that the hands-on work was complete. This was the moment of truth. Either her solution would work, or she would have led the team down yet another dead end when they could least afford it. Richardson positioned himself at the main control station, his expression grim. Initiating startup sequence. His fingers moved over the controls with practiced precision. Calibration baseline established. Beginning filtration cycle. The prototype hummed to life, its operational sounds familiar to everyone in the room after months of testing. Gloria closed her eyes briefly, focusing on the subtle harmonics beneath the more obvious mechanical noises. The vibration pattern was different now, more balanced, the dangerous resonance frequencies absorbed by the new components. Dr. Joe watched the calibration readings with intense focus. 20 minutes and holding steady. The room remained silent as they watched the monitors. 25 minutes. 30. As they approached the critical 37-minute mark, the tension became almost unbearable. Gloria found herself holding her breath. 36 minutes, Richardson announced, his tone neutral. Calibration variance at 0.03%, well within acceptable parameters. 37 minutes, Dr. Joe continued the countdown. Still holding. The room erupted in tentative smiles and restrained optimism, but Gloria knew better than to celebrate too soon. Let it run the full cycle, she cautioned. We need to be sure. Richardson glanced at her, an unreadable expression crossing his face. Then he made a slight adjustment to the controls. I'm increasing flow rate by 15% to stress test the system. Gloria frowned. That wasn't part of the test protocol. We need to be thorough, Richardson replied, not meeting her eyes. If your solution is robust, it should handle operational variances. Dr. Joe stepped forward. Marcus, we should follow the agreed. We're already committed to this approach, Richardson interrupted. Let's make sure it actually works under real-world conditions. Gloria watched the monitors carefully, a sinking feeling in her stomach. The increased flow rate would create new vibration patterns that her dampening system wasn't specifically calibrated for. It might hold or it might fail spectacularly. At the 40-minute mark, warning indicators began to flash. The calibration variance jumped to 2%, then 3%, approaching the failure threshold. The team watched in dismay as the promising test began to unravel. The dampening system is failing, Richardson announced, a note of vindication in his voice. It's not failing, Gloria corrected, stepping forward to study the readings. It's being deliberately pushed beyond its design parameters. This isn't a fair test. But her words were lost as the calibration variance hit 5%, triggering a system alert. The prototype automatically shifted to safety mode, effectively ending the test. Richardson looked almost satisfied as he turned to face the team. Well, we tried your approach, he said with finality, his gaze settling on Gloria. Back to the drawing board. Dr. Joe looked devastated. There has to be something we're missing. Gloria stared at the readouts, analyzing what had just happened. The dampening system had worked perfectly under standard conditions, only failing when Richardson had deliberately altered the parameters. It wasn't a failure of her solution, but a failure of implementation. The approach was correct, she said, her voice steady despite the crushing disappointment. The implementation wasn't. She turned to face the team, standing taller than she had in years. You've spent months looking at this problem from one angle. I'm offering you a different perspective. What do you have to lose by trying it exactly as I've specified? The room was tense, team members glancing between Gloria and Richardson, uncertain where authority truly lay in this unusual situation. Richardson's expression hardened, but before he could respond, Dr. Joe spoke up. She's right, she said firmly. The test was invalid due to the parameter change. Let's try it her way. Exactly her way. Richardson clearly wanted to object, but the weight of the project's impending failure hung over him as heavily as everyone else. Fine, he conceded with poor grace. But let's be clear about responsibility here. Your name goes on the failure report, he warned Gloria directly. Fair enough, Gloria replied, meeting his gaze without flinching. And if it works? The question hung in the air, unanswered but unavoidable. If her solution succeeded where months of conventional approaches had failed, what would that mean for the power dynamics that had shaped Axion's culture? What would it mean for Gloria herself? Richardson offered no response, merely a curt nod, before turning back to the controls to reset the system. Dr. Joe moved closer to Gloria and spoke quietly. We'll need to work through the night to recalibrate and run a proper test. Gloria nodded. I'll stay. The night shift was her normal hours anyway, though the work would be dramatically different. As the team dispersed to prepare for the extended effort, Gloria remained by the prototype, her hand resting lightly on its exterior panel. The machine hummed beneath her touch, its vibrations telling a story that only she seemed able to read. A story of potential still waiting to be properly realized. Dawn broke over Axion Industries, casting long golden rays through the windows of Lab 7. Gloria had been awake for nearly 24 hours, but fatigue couldn't touch the electric anticipation running through her body. The modifications to the prototype had been completed, exactly to her specifications this time, with no compromises or alterations. Every dampening component had been measured to the precise millimeter, every connection point secured at the exact torque she had calculated. Dr. Joe looked as exhausted as Gloria felt, but there was a renewed energy in her movements as she ran through the pre-test checklist. Several other engineers had stayed through the night as well, their initial skepticism gradually giving way to cautious hope as they witnessed the methodical precision Gloria brought to the process. At 7:30 a.m., Richardson arrived, his appearance freshly pressed despite the early hour, as if he'd come directly from home rather than having worked through the night. His expression betrayed nothing as he surveyed the modified prototype. We're ready for the test, Doctor, Joe informed him, her tone professional but with an undercurrent of tension. Full calibration protocol, standard parameters, no adjustments. The emphasis on the last words was subtle but unmistakable. Richardson merely nodded, taking his position at the main console without comment. By 8 a.m., the entire crisis team had assembled. Some looked skeptical, others hopeful, all exhausted from weeks of pressure and late nights. Gloria stood slightly apart, acutely aware of her navy blue maintenance uniform amid the lab coats and business casual attire, a visual reminder of the boundaries she had crossed. Initiating startup sequence, Richardson announced, his voice carefully neutral. Establishing calibration baseline. The prototype hummed to life, the sound subtly different now with the dampening components in place. Gloria closed her eyes briefly, listening beyond the mechanical noises to the harmonics beneath. Balanced, controlled, the dangerous resonance absorbed and dissipated. Filtration cycle beginning, Dr. Joe called out, her gaze fixed on the monitors. Calibration holding steady. The minutes ticked by in tense silence. 20 minutes, 25, 30. As they approached the critical 37-minute mark, the atmosphere in the lab grew thick with anticipation. Gloria found herself holding her breath, her hand unconsciously pressed against her notebook of calculations. 35 minutes, Richardson noted, his voice betraying the first hint of uncertainty. Calibration variance at 0.01%. That's well within normal parameters, Ron, Doctor. Joe clarified for everyone, a smile beginning to form. 37 minutes, announced a junior engineer, taking over the countdown. Still holding steady. A ripple of excitement moved through the team. Gloria exhaled slowly, but kept her expression measured. They weren't out of danger yet. 40 minutes, Dr. Joe called out, her professional composure beginning to crack. Calibration is perfect. The team erupted in smiles and quiet exclamations of relief, but Gloria's attention remained fixed on the readouts. She wanted to see it maintain calibration well beyond the previous failure point. At the 1-hour mark, with the prototype still running flawlessly, Richardson checked his watch, his expression guarded but softening around the edges. The dampening system is performing as designed, he acknowledged, the admission clearly difficult for him. He turned to Gloria, meeting her eyes directly for perhaps the first time. Your solution appears to be working, Mrs. Jenkins. Gloria nodded, accepting the grudging acknowledgement with dignity rather than triumph. The team implemented it perfectly, she replied, sharing the credit with his engineers. It was collaborative. After 2 hours of perfect operation, there was no denying the success. The prototype maintained calibration within 0.02% variance, far better than the project requirements demanded. The crisis that had threatened 300 jobs and millions in investment had been resolved with a solution that, in retrospect, seemed elegantly simple. As the team began to disperse, many approached Gloria to shake her hand or offer quiet thanks. The interactions were awkward but genuine, the first steps in restructuring relationships that had been defined by hierarchy and assumption. Dr. Joe hung back until the lab had emptied except for her, Gloria, and Richardson. Thank you, she said simply to Gloria, not just for the solution, but for having the courage to step forward with it. Richardson gathered his tablet and notes, his expression complex. I'll inform the board that we've resolved the calibration issue, he said, moving toward the door. At the threshold, he paused, turning back to Gloria. Good work. The acknowledgement was minimal, but from Richardson, it represented a seismic shift. Gloria nodded in response, understanding that some transformations would take longer than others. As the door closed behind him, Dr. Joe turned to Gloria with a tired but genuine smile. You should go home and rest. You've earned it. Gloria glanced at her watch. Her regular shift had ended hours ago. Actually, I need to check in with Miguel. He covered my cleaning rotation last night. Dr. Joe's expression shifted to one of surprise, then understanding. Right, of course. She hesitated, then added, This doesn't have to be a one-time consultation, you know. Your expertise would be valuable to Axion on a more regular basis. The suggestion hung in the air between them, an opportunity, a recognition, a potential bridge between Gloria's past and future. I'll think about it, Gloria replied, too overwhelmed to consider the implications fully in her exhausted state. Please do, Doctor, Joe said warmly. Get some rest and we'll talk soon. In the days that followed, Gloria found herself in unfamiliar territory. Word of her contribution had spread throughout Axion, with the speed that only workplace gossip can achieve. Engineering staff who had previously looked through her now nodded in acknowledgement when they passed in hallways. Some even stopped to introduce themselves or ask questions about her Navy experience. On Wednesday, she received a formal email from Human Resources requesting a meeting. She arrived at the designated time, still in her maintenance uniform, to find both Dr. Joe and CEO Thomas Warner waiting for her. Mrs. Jenkins, Warner began, standing to shake her hand. I've heard quite a story about your contribution to the Aquamatrix project. Gloria sat straight-backed in the offered chair, her expression composed despite her internal nerves. I was happy to help, sir. You did more than help, Warner replied. According to Dr. Joe, you saved the entire project with an insight our engineering team had missed for months. Dr. Joe nodded confirmation. Gloria identified a fundamental issue that our approach had overlooked. Without her intervention, we would have lost the contract. Warner studied Gloria with newfound interest. Dr. Joe tells me you were a mechanical engineer in the Navy. Yes, sir. 12 years of service, specialized in vibration analysis and system integration. And yet you've been working in our maintenance department for 15 years. It wasn't quite a question, more an observation tinged with puzzlement. Gloria maintained her composure. Life takes unexpected turns, Mr. Warner. After my husband's illness and death, I needed stable employment that allowed me to care for my daughter. The janitorial position served that purpose. Warner nodded slowly. Well, Mrs. Jenkins, I believe Axion has failed to utilize your talents appropriately. I'd like to offer you a position as a technical consultant for the Aquamatrix project, with a salary commensurate with your expertise and experience. The offer was simultaneously expected and shocking. Gloria had spent 15 years adjusting to invisibility, to being overlooked, to compressing her capabilities into the narrow scope allowed by her position. The prospect of stepping fully back into her expertise was both thrilling and terrifying. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Warner," she replied carefully, "but I would have some conditions." Warner raised an eyebrow, but gestured for her to continue. "I would like support to complete my engineering degree," Gloria stated. "I was 3 semesters short when I left to care for my husband." "That seems reasonable," Warner agreed. "And I would like Axion to establish a program to identify and develop talent from within all levels of the company." Gloria's voice grew stronger as she outlined her vision. "There are likely others whose skills and potential are being overlooked because of their current positions." Dr. Joe smiled approvingly. "That's an excellent suggestion." Warner considered for a moment, then nodded. "I believe we could implement something along those lines. Anything else?" Gloria thought of Richardson, of the cultural changes that would be necessary for real transformation. "Respect isn't automatic with a title change, Mr. Warner. It's earned and given. I'd need your support in establishing my role beyond this single contribution." "You'll have it," Warner assured her, extending his hand to seal the agreement. "Welcome to the technical team, Mrs. Jenkins." 6 months later, Gloria stood at the podium during the official launch of the Aqua Matrix water purification system. The project that had nearly collapsed was now Axion's flagship product, with orders already exceeding projections. Her navy blue maintenance uniform had been replaced by business attire, though she had insisted on keeping her original badge number as a reminder of her journey. As she looked out at the audience, she saw Amara beaming with pride from the front row, having flown in specifically for the event. She saw Dr. Joe, now a close friend and mentor who had championed Gloria's transition into her new role. She even saw Richardson, whose initial resentment had gradually transformed into grudging respect as they worked together on refining the prototype for production. But most importantly, she saw herself clearly for the first time in years. Not as just a janitor, not as just an engineer, but as someone who had finally embraced her whole self, bringing all of her experiences and wisdom to bear on the world's problems. The invisible woman had become impossible to overlook. "Sometimes the most valuable perspective," Gloria told the audience, her voice confident and clear, "comes from those who see the whole system, not just the parts we're trained to focus on." The solution was always there, hiding in plain sight, just like me. As applause filled the auditorium, Gloria realized she had completed her own hero's journey, facing trials, transformation, and returning with wisdom that could benefit not just herself, but everyone around her. She had crossed thresholds, both professional and personal, exchanging invisibility for impact, silence for voice, adaptation for authenticity. And in doing so, she had changed not just a machine, but an entire system, proving that expertise could be found in unexpected places, that value wasn't defined by title or position, and that sometimes the person holding the mop might also hold the answer.